Well, we're finally here. The final main galaxy in Super Mario Galaxy. It has been a journey, hasn't it? From giant beehives to arid deserts to whatever's going on in the Toy Time Galaxy, it's all been leading up to this. We've joined swim classes, raced ghosts, and walked on worms. Super Mario Galaxy truly is a game where anything can be possible. A game that says yes to everything. Only a few games have ever been able to consistently surprise, captivate, and delight players in ways that are so different from each other, yet all somehow connect perfectly. So let's go ahead and see if Mario Galaxy can pull it off one more time. And with that, I take us to the Melty Molten Galaxy. A Mario game ending on a lava level is just about as sure of a thing as the sun coming up in the morning, and so here we are. The first mission of the galaxy is called the Sinking Lava Spire, but we have a lot to get through before we arrive there. The starting area is large and flat, which definitely gives off impressions of lethal lava land from Super Mario 64. I think the lava geysers here last a bit too long. Getting caught by one as it's rising up is one thing, but once they're all fully formed, there's no additional challenge provided by needing to wait for them to go back down. In fact, I think you can make them even more of a challenge if they didn't stay up for as long. I get the sense that the designers decided to make them stay down longer as well to compensate for how long we might have to wait to pass them. So if you cut the timing of both sides down, the whole area would feel a lot more alive and exciting. Over on the other side, we pass through a few blasts of steam and then wall jump up to the top. The Sling Star on the cliff will shoot us up to the Launch Star, which we could activate right away, but it's a lot more fun to just let Mario drop to the bottom. If there's one thing I took away from the iconic title Wii Sports Resort, it's that we always want to enter a volcano whenever possible. The only reward here is a handful of Starbits, which may seem insignificant, but if you were to ask the citizens of Pompeii in the year 79 AD, I'm pretty sure they'd have preferred this over the alternative. Although once we do use the Launch Star, we're treated to a view of the volcano erupting behind Mario. I get the sense that the developers intended this part to carry a sense of triumph, as it's not too far off from watching fireworks. Maybe triumphant for the player that they're almost at the end of the game, or maybe triumphant for the dev team that they're almost finished working on it. But whatever the backstory may be, the next segment we arrive at is a cluster of 3 small glass planets. These should look familiar from the Space Junk Galaxy, from all the way back in episode 2 of this series. God, we've come so far, haven't we? When I started working on this, I was 27 years old. Now I'm 89. Unfortunately, as you can see, when recording this footage, I was trying to get some crazy long jumps in, but I wasn't able to make it happen. Still fun to try though. Next up is another Sling Star path, and this one is even more difficult than the one last time in the Dreadnought Galaxy. The reason for this is that each of these small little lava planets have their own force of gravity, which can often end up pulling us in directions that we aren't expecting. Add on to the fact that we have to avoid entire tails behind each fireball, which can leave us a limited window for when we can go. Next, we're treated to another properly cinematic moment by way of the Launch Star, and then onto this flying saucer. Flying saucer here is actually a leftover from an earlier build in the game, where Top Maniac was originally fought in this galaxy instead of the last one. That may be the reality of things, but I like to think the Top Man tribe crashed onto this planet after Mario defeated them in the Dreadnought Galaxy. Nintendo might not give much thought to the story in Mario games, but I sure will. The next part we jump to is a planet on top of a planet, or maybe more of a star on top of a star. This smaller sphere has its own center of gravity separate from the one it's placed on, but that doesn't take away at all from the idea of it being part of a larger body. It can be tough to clear out all these little fire enemies if that's what we're going for. Even if we might partially take them out with a spin, they're never too far from a lava pool to jump into, which will fire them right back up. But really, we can just ignore them and focus on the star chips. After all, none are very hidden. Once we have them all, it's finally time to move on to the famous Sinking Lava Spire. The cage around the spire gives it a nice bit of visual flair, and the flight over to this area keeps the star in focus, so our directions are clear. Although, would the Power Star be anywhere but the top of the mountain? I've played enough Mario games to know that if we have to climb something, the game will probably want us to get all the way to the top. One smart design choice is that while we're on the path leading up to the spire, each segment of it will start to slip away the second that Mario places his feet on it. This doesn't just make what would be a very straightforward section more interesting, but also gives us practice for what's about to come. Because right when we get to the spire itself, the whole thing starts to sink. See, the level title never lies. There's a lot of distractions on our way to the top, whether they be enemies or items. But we can't let them fool us. The time to get the star before everything collapses is surprisingly tight. And if we get a little too star-bit hungry, that's a one-way ticket to a fiery grave. I do go get the 1-up here though, I always have to get the 1-up. But if we ignore temptation to add to our ridiculously high starbit count, we'll successfully end up at the only crystal here that's worth smashing, the one that contains the star. The next mission in the Melty Molten galaxy is titled Through the Meteor Storm. And unlike the last mission where I had to wait to the end to see what the name of it was referring to, we're going to feel the meteor storm right away. When we get to the further edge of the first area, you might see these torches and fear that I'm about to subject you to another diatribe against the Fireflower. Not the case. Here we have to light the torches, yes, but no power-ups are involved. Instead, we have to lure this fire enemy over to each of them and trick him into lighting the torches for us. This is actually a really clever use. It takes two elements of the game we're already familiar with, torches and these enemies, and combines them in an interesting way. Why it took them until the very last galaxy to find a use for torches that's not more painful than a root canal is beyond me. But I suppose it's better late than never. Once we have them lit, the launch star will appear, which will take us to another 2D section. This part here doesn't last super long, but it's still a great inclusion nonetheless. The bit with 2 thwomps in a row really forces us to keep moving forward without hesitation, and then rewards us with the 1-up. This is one of the only 1-ups in the game where it's just on the straightforward path, not tucked away in some corner that requires additional risk-taking or curiosity to reach. I think this 1-up is placed here because it's one of the few moments in Super Mario Galaxy where the path we have to go on is just as dangerous as the path we might choose to go on for a special reward. The 1-up right here is an acknowledgement that yes, you did the right thing. Good job, pal. The subsequent launch star will take us to another planet on top of a planet similar to the one from the last mission. However, this one feels much more connected to the main planet it's on than the last one, which was more of a growth on a larger structure. The objective here is the same as it was previously. Collect the 5 star chips. However, we do see a ramp up in difficulty, due in no small part to these blue flame enemies. These guys can only be defeated by shooting a star bit at them, which I didn't know while filming this, so you won't see it happen here. I know, I might as well just delete every video in this series and hang my head in shame. The next planet we land on is the shape of the best kind of sofa, a U. Once again, the design team employs the smart trick of landing us on what's our final objective of this planet, but locks it away. What we have to do will become easily apparent when we get to the other end. Guide the bullet bill to smash the glass. It's great to see this type of level geometry again, and I do think that the planets shaped like this are the best that Super Mario Galaxy has to offer. Unfortunately, there's not enough of them. The last one I can remember seeing was all the way back in the Gusty Garden Galaxy. The hardest part of this section is guiding the bullet bill between these layers of walls, but once we get him there, it's on to the final part. Standing at the start of the section gives me the same feeling I get as when looking down a giant water slide that I'm already sitting in. 30% excitement, 70% terror. This is one of those infamous segments in Mario Galaxy where we have to balance on top of a giant ball containing a star and use the motion controls to roll it towards the finish line. I didn't cover it in this series, but this mechanic first appeared in the Rolling Green Galaxy. Back in the original Wii version, this was easy enough because you use the Wii Remote as a giant analog stick. The Nintendo Switch version, though, is different. The closest way to replicate the original Wii controls would be to use the split Joy-Cons, but then you have to use the split Joy-Cons. The right Joy-Con essentially becomes your Wii Remote in this case, and playing like this does feel very close to how it did back in 2007. The problem is, I try to avoid using the Joy-Cons whenever possible. Even in handheld mode, I bring out the Fixture S2 so I can play with a Pro Controller. Look, I'm a regular-sized man who needs regular-sized analog sticks, not those things on the Joy-Cons that are barely a step above what we had on the 3DS. But the Pro Controller for this section is not ideal. Tilting the whole thing forward is far from comfortable, and the entire time you're playing, you just can't help but feel like things just aren't lining up quite right. Even if you're like me and you are a dedicated Pro Controller worshiper, it's worth it to switch over to the Joy-Cons for these segments, even if only to replicate the feeling of playing on the Wii. The worst way to play these parts, though, is in handheld mode. If you do this, you have to tilt the entire system to move, which just feels so wrong. I suppose if you want something that can serve as a modern recreation of Kirby Tilt and Tumble, go for it. But otherwise, you're just subjecting yourself to unneeded torture. One thing I'd like to point out about this section is that while the lava we're moving across looks much more intimidating and dangerous than the pleasant grass of the rolling green galaxy, it's actually no different. When we're on the ball, it's impossible to fall off onto the land around us. The only way to fail is to fall off the course entirely. So this lava is purely for show. There wouldn't be any functional difference if it was replaced with grass, or with ice, or with cake, or any other surface that Mario walks on in this game. However, even if the material that the ball is on doesn't technically matter, it does thematically matter. First of all, it fits in with the rest of the level, which is obvious enough. But if the surface doesn't make a difference, why not have it be the most dangerous substance in the game? What this accomplishes is it gives the player a sense of challenge when they come up to it, which then creates greater gratification when they come to the end. Beating a lava level undoubtedly feels like more of an achievement than beating a grass level, even if on paper, the lava doesn't really do anything. In a way, this is a recreation of the big spiky piranha plant from back in the Good Egg Galaxy. He's just as easy to defeat as a regular piranha plant, but because he looks more intimidating, beating him feels like more of an accomplishment. The only other thing I want to say about this part is that I really like how the music will slow down and speed up based on how fast Mario's moving. Discovering this back when I originally played this as a kid gave me one of those great "video games can do that" moments that only come around every so often, and become increasingly rare the older you get and the more games you play. When we get to the end, the ball smashes open and the star floats to the top of the flagpole, forcing us to recreate a classic sight that you might remember from the original Super Mario Bros. By climbing our way to the top. Now, are you ready for it? The last mission in the last galaxy in the last video in this series? It almost doesn't feel real. Maybe it's not so big of a deal to you, but to me, I've been eating, breathing, and smoking Super Mario Galaxy for the last several months. Even if you can believe we're here, I certainly can't. Luckily for me, the last mission ends as a very tidy bookend for the series, finishing off with the very same boss as we started with in the first mission in the first galaxy in the first video, Dino Piranha. Before we get to him though, we start out in the same area as the last two missions. Not much has changed, but I do want to point out how smoothly I jump between these two pillars of fire. A clip like that could be an E3 trailer. And I definitely jump between them on purpose. Definitely. There's no volcanoes or launch stars for us this time. Instead, we'll jump up this little platforming segment and then take the pipe to the flying saucer for mission 1. We end up on the same small circular planet from that mission as well, but this time there's no star chips to be found. Instead, our objective is one that's much more aggressive. We have to defeat all of these fire enemies. They each take one spin and then a kick, which is simple enough as long as we're careful to not let them get reinvigorated by bouncing back into the lava. Locking a launch star behind a challenge of defeating all enemies isn't a tactic that Super Mario Galaxy employs very often. It might be very common for other games, but it's completely uncommon for this one. I think that's because Galaxy is much more focused on level design than combat in general. And while there are a lot of enemies, there's not much variety in the ways they're defeated. It's usually a spin, a jump, or some combination of the two. So while it's nice that this part in the Melty Molten Galaxy does change things up on this front, it does end up feeling out of place. Defeating all the enemies isn't a challenge that the player might necessarily be expecting, so making them do this now could lead to some confusion. If the player is someone who tends to ignore the enemies most of the time because the game allows them to, they might be fluttering around not sure of what to do for quite a while. I think the solution here would have been to keep the 5 star chips, but they drop from each enemy as we defeat them. That way we only have to take out one in order to know what our objective is. As it's set up now, we might defeat all but one of the enemies and still not know that that's what we're supposed to be doing. Plus, there are 5 of these fire guys here, so you wouldn't even need to change up the amount. When we do finally get the launch star, whether it's by accident or on purpose, it'll bring us to a similar but constantly moving planet. It's a straight shot to the next launch star, although we'll need to be careful to avoid the long-tailed flames. Having the planet move underneath us is a great way to add an X factor into the challenge, and adds the idea that everything in this galaxy is constantly moving and flowing. Speaking of constantly moving, there's no better planet to show that off than this next one. Similar to the octagon-shaped planet from the last mission, this one is strictly 2D, with the gravity pulling towards the center. The goal is to collect 5 star chips, each of which are at varying heights. This can require some clever maneuvers to get all of them without having to ride one platform all the way around the planet. I especially like how the camera focuses on Mario, rather than the structure, so even though we're moving every which way, it always feels like we're right side up. It's a really unique challenge, and one that just wouldn't be possible without Super Mario Galaxy's gravity system. Before we get to the boss, we go through this quick section that focuses on sinking platforms. It's nothing extravagant, but it works, and helps to drill the idea into our heads that in this galaxy, we can never be safe in one place for too long. The boss fight of this galaxy starts off just as serenely as all the way back in the Good Egg Galaxy. What also hasn't changed is the fact that Mario is completely in the wrong here. Showing up on a foreign planet and immediately fighting its only resident? No amount of princess saving can justify that. The main difference between this fight and the one in the beginning is that Dino Piranha's tail will periodically alight with flames, which will damage Mario if he hits it. It adds an element of timing not present before, and does do a good job of amping up the difficulty. Hitting him the first time isn't too much of a problem, but after this, his tail creates a trail of fire behind it, severely limiting the places Mario can go on an already small planet. If this wasn't hard enough, on the third phase, he'll start spitting out giant fireballs. So you can see how this fight might start off easy, but how quickly it ramps up. Thanks to Dino Piranha's large body, the trail of fire, the fireballs, and the constantly alighting tail, the opportunities we have to successfully hit him are narrow. Sometimes, just when we think we have a chance, his tail immediately bursts back into flames. And sometimes when his tail is open to attack, there's numerous fiery hazards in the way. While this might not be saying all that much, Fiery Dino Piranha is one of the hardest bosses in the game, which is a big point in its favor. If you're going to end with the same boss in the last level as you started with in the first level, you've got to crank things up a notch, and give the player an opportunity to show how much they've improved. So this boss can be annoying just due to how much is going on in a very confined space, but if it was any easier, the fight would be underwhelming. At this point in the game, anyone who's made it this far should have a good handle on things, and so taking down a version of Dino Piranha with the heat cranked up should be manageable. And so that's it. That was the last mission in the last galaxy in the last video in this series. And at the time I wrote these words here that I'm saying now, I haven't filmed or edited anything. I wanted to get all the writing process done before I started actually making the videos, so that I can overlook the whole series from the beginning and tie the videos together in meaningful ways. However, I had my suspicions that my feelings on certain aspects of the game, or the experience making the videos, might change as I went along. So writing a proper conclusion before I started the true video making process wouldn't really work. That's why, immediately following the sentence, what you'll see in here was written, filmed, and edited after everything you've seen and heard up to this point. Well, hello again. So, Super Mario Galaxy. It's a game. It is quite the game. It has been quite a while since I've recorded something. Today is June 24th, 2024. The Deep Dark Galaxy video just went up a few days ago. So next up is Dreadnought, and then this one you're seeing now, Melty Molten. It's been many months since I've recorded something. You can actually tell because now in the background of this, my air conditioner is on where it wasn't before because it was cold out. Now it's way too hot to be recording something without air conditioning on. And so to give you some backstory on how this series kind of came together, it was very much inspired by the two Matthew Matosis commentaries, specifically the Devil May Cry one and the Dark Souls one. And in both of those, he basically just commentates through the whole game, giving his thoughts on every little aspect, which was an outstanding amount of work, I'm sure. So I definitely took some inspiration from that and applied it to Super Mario Galaxy. I knew I had to do it with a game I was already pretty familiar with, otherwise the already monumental amount of work would be even bigger. And so Mario Galaxy just seemed like the right fit for this type of series. Because there's a lot going on in each level of Mario Galaxy, and each level also brings something new to the table, so I figured I'd have something to talk about for each episode. Also, for inspiring me to make this series, I want to give a big thank you to the YouTuber WizCatchesLightning, who makes a ton of great videos on different games, especially Zelda games, Final Fantasy. Really awesome stuff. He recommended to me to really niche down on a series of 10 videos on a certain game or a certain series. And so between that and the Mathematosis videos, I was like, maybe I could do something with Mario Galaxy. That'd be fun. And with 15 main galaxies, that turned into 15 videos, quite a bit more than the 10 he recommended. So, Wiz, if you're watching this, I didn't just take your advice, I took 150% of your advice. You're not going to get that kind of return on investment anywhere else. The first step in the whole thing was the writing process, which was very, very long. I think going into the whole thing, I kind of underestimated how much work it would be, and it was fun the entire time, but it was definitely a lot more than I expected. Because I don't know if you can tell, I hope you can tell, but all the videos are completely 100% scripted. I wrote every single word that I said on there. I wasn't freewheeling it at all. Thankfully, the structure of the whole thing helped a lot. I knew that each galaxy would have 3 stars I'd talk about, so I'd just write about one after the other, and that made things a bit easier. This was the first group of videos I actually used a capture card for to capture my own gameplay footage, which was a really big help. This was not the kind of series that you could do without your own footage just because I needed very specific things at very specific times in a lot of situations. With a lot of my past videos, I would just take gameplay footage from other YouTube channels like these long play channels, which if I did that to you, sorry, I didn't have a capture card at the time. But I'm beyond that now. I'm recording my own gameplay footage, and I think the videos are all the better for it, and all the videos I will continue to make into the future will be better for it. The only problem with all that was, after I recorded about 5 galaxies, my laptop that I was using died, which was very, very annoying because I had to redo all that. Thankfully, all my scripts that I had written were in Google Cloud, so I didn't lose any actual progress on that, but still. And it did inspire me to actually build a PC, which is competent and is very useful when it comes to editing large videos. That's right, I invented a new computer. Isn't that amazing? Plus, one thing with the capture card and then recording things on my computer too was just recording all the random B-roll of different Mario games, other older games, and that was a lot of fun too, to just jump around and see what kind of gameplay I needed and then go and get a few minutes of that game, so that was pretty cool. The editing process was definitely a lot, but it was not too bad just because everything is so linear. One thing I recommend if you're a YouTuber who wants to make a video in this style or any sort of scripted video or really any kind of video, there is a PC application called Recut, which will automatically cut out silence, which, oh my god, that probably cut the hours I spent editing down by half. Plus, the best thing about it is not a subscription. It's just a one-time payment, and you just buy it and you have it, which I really appreciate in software today. So, love that. So, big shout out to people who made Recut. Such a big help. I also learned a lot about editing as I was going through the series. Different effects, like the fast forward and rewind things were cool, so I enjoyed that a lot. And now to see the reception of the series as a whole, that has been really fantastic. When I was first putting this together, I really didn't know if anyone would care about Super Mario Galaxy in this specific way, and thankfully, it seems like people do. Seeing the comments on each video as they've gone up every week has really been a highlight for me, and it is just so fantastic to see all the great feedback. So if you're someone who's left a comment on any of the videos, thank you so much. It means a ton to see that the work I'm doing is appreciated and well-liked. My favorite videos in the series have definitely been the ones where I did something in addition to the normal gameplay analysis. Something like the magazine section of the Beach Bowl Galaxy, or in the Ghostly Galaxy where I was reaching out to a long-lost friend, or in the Toy Time Galaxy where I was going through the philosophy of power-ups, which is still design, but it's a little bit external to the main thing. Each one of those videos definitely feels a lot more special to me than the other ones, and I like all the other ones, but I think those I really stretched myself and did things I didn't think that I would be doing when I went into this, and I'm really happy I went that extra mile with those and took those risks, especially for the magazine one. I was in the writing process, I was thinking, do I really want to do this? Would this be weird to have a whole section about something that's entirely not related to the gameplay? But I'm so happy I did, and things like that are a ton of fun to make. And so this might sound very strange, but the goal of making this series was not to analyze Super Mario Galaxy. That was a nice byproduct of it for sure, but my real goal with it was to just get better at video game design analysis. And I think I achieved this. I really learned a lot about the game I hadn't realized before, and I was thinking a lot deeper about it than I really thought I could, which was awesome. Things like how items are used in certain scenarios, the different power-ups, especially the fire and ice flower stuff, that was all things that I had, I think, in the back of my mind as some things I was thinking about the game, but I hadn't really fully processed it, and I was not able to articulate it until I really sat down and wrote everything out in this series. And so, yeah, these videos have been an absolute blast to make. It was fun writing them, recording, editing, putting it all together, and then seeing the reception. It's just been a blast. And so you might be wondering, what direction does this channel take now that this series is over? So this channel has evolved a lot in the time since I first started it. First, I was doing real short, like bite-sized videos on game design, then expanded those a bit. I started getting on camera, did a few like news videos on like current trending topics, and then finally this series. But with this series being over, what happens now? Now, it might seem natural to just do this same format with another game, especially Super Mario Galaxy 2, but especially when it comes to Super Mario Galaxy 2, I don't really plan to do this series with that game. And there's a few reasons for this. One is just the gargantuan amount of work that this series took. I'm sure I could do it more efficiently the second time around, but I don't really want to just be doing the same thing again. And also, Super Mario Galaxy 2 probably has less to say about it than Super Mario Galaxy 1, just because a lot of the power-ups that are in both games I've already talked about. A lot of the level functionality might be the same, and I don't want to retread anything. Also, I'm not nearly as familiar with Super Mario Galaxy 2 as I am with the first game, and so I'd really have to start from scratch in order to make a series like this for that. So I'm not going to say that that's never going to happen, but at this point I don't plan to. So then what is the next era for this channel? So it is going to remain focused on game design, and I'm always going to stick to that, I think. And it's always going to be fully scripted and edited videos. Now, for a while, I was doing a video on a different game and a different topic. Basically, every week, I tried to get videos out like once a week, usually. And that was fun, but that really put a damper on how much I could expand something, trying to get things out that regularly. And so I'm not quite going back to that, but I am going to be going to some sort of a different form of that. So my plan is to make longer videos, real more deep dives on game design, focusing on new releases, interspersed with videos on general topics in game design. Because as much as I like discussing one random old game, I also want this channel to grow and reach more people. And making videos on games soon after they come out should hopefully do that. I only plan to make these videos that are on one specific game on games that I am really interested in, so you're not going to see me going deep into the new Assassin's Creed or whatever. No, I'm only going to be making videos on games that I find interesting or exciting or seem to do something new, because the more interested I am in the subject matter, the better the video will be. I do have a few games in mind that are coming out later this year, which I would like to do these videos on. I don't want to say what they are now, just because things could always change, but there's some things I'm very excited about. And I'm eager to put my newfound analysis skills that I've gained through doing this series to work on a new release. And by making the videos longer and more intricate too, I'll be able to do more exciting and different things within those videos, like that Beach Bowl magazine section. I'd love to do things not that exactly, but like that in a video on another game, just because I'll have the ability to. And plus, it's fun. And because of the amount of work I want to put into each individual video, it's definitely going to be a quality over quantity approach. And because not that many games come out that I'm so interested in that I want to make a whole big video on, in between these videos on specific games, I'm going to be doing some videos on general gaming topics, but cover a wider range of games within that video. So it'd be about one certain aspect of video games or about game design that applies to many games and going through multiple games in that one. I'm a good way through the writing process of the first one of these videos right now, and it's something I'm pretty excited about. Also, it's just really fun writing again because I wrote everything for this series all at once. Then I started recording and editing it. So it's been a while since I actually sat down and wrote something, and being able to do that again, it's been fun. The writing part of the process is very interesting for me because it's somehow the most draining, but also the most invigorating step in the whole thing. I'd say the writing is the most important step of any video I make, and so it's probably good that I enjoy it as much as I do. The channel will also probably remain with a pretty strong Nintendo focus, and that's just because Nintendo tends to put out games that I'm interested in more than the others. So certainly not every video will be Nintendo related, but the majority of them likely will. So to sum up, I'm going to be making videos on new games soon-ish after they come out, interspersed with videos on wider topics in gaming. It'll all be completely scripted, edited, and focused on game design primarily. And I'm really excited for the next era of this channel. I want to be able to talk about a lot of different things related to gaming, and I think this new format will do it, and hopefully be able to grow the channel alongside with it too, because I would like more people to get access to these videos. And so if you've been watching this series from the beginning, I give you a big thank you. If you're just coming into this last video now, I would recommend you check it out from the beginning. The link to the playlist with all videos is in the description. And if you haven't checked out any of my older videos from before this series, I would recommend that too. A lot of different games I've covered, a lot of different topics, and I'm mostly proud of each one. I definitely think I've improved a lot in my writing and editing since the early days of this channel, but there's still a lot of things I like about my older videos, so if you enjoyed the series, I think you would like them too. So thank you to everyone for watching. Happy to see so much great feedback on this series, and I hope you will tune in for what I have next.